The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus said to his disciples, "Is a lamp brought in to be placed under a bushel basket or under a bed, and not to be placed on a lampstand? For there is nothing hidden except to be made visible. Nothing is secret except to come to light. Anyone who has ears to hear ought to hear." He also told them, "Take care what you hear. The measure with which you measure will be measured out to you. Still more will be given to you. The one who has, more will be given. From the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away." The Gospel of the Lord. Today is the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas. I love the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas. I actually have a relic of St. Thomas Aquinas that I carry around with me in my breviary. One of my favorite saints. He was a Dominican living in the 13th century, so in the Dominican order was first beginning. And it was kind of interesting how he joined the Dominicans because his family didn't want him to join the Dominicans. They preferred that he join a monastery and become the abbot. And you might be thinking, well, what's the difference becoming a Dominican priest as opposed to joining a monastery? During the High Middle Ages, joining a monastery, oftentimes families who were well off, they would send their children to monasteries because that's where the greatest education was. And sometimes the abbots, like bishops of that day, tended to be the most privileged people in the society. So if you wanted to have a mover and shaker in your family, a great place to send them was to a monastery. And in those days, sometimes there were arrangements where they could make you into an abbot. St. Thomas Aquinas didn't want to do that. He wanted to be a real and holy and devout priest. And so he wanted to join the Dominican order. The Dominican order at that time was kind of radical because as opposed to many other priests and bishops, the Dominicans took a vow of poverty. They were traveling mendicant preachers. They lived lives of poverty and austerity and intense study. So that was how we ended up joining the Dominicans. There's a number of great stories about St. Thomas Aquinas we could talk about. There's some really good biographies. One of my favorite books is on St. Thomas Aquinas. It's called The Dumb Ox. It's by G.K. Chesterton. The Dumb Ox, because that was one of Thomas Aquinas' nicknames while he was in the university studying for the priesthood. He didn't say a whole lot in his class, and so some of his classmates nicknamed him the Dumb Ox. And his famous professor, St. Albert the Great, he said, "Someday that dumb ox is going to bellow so loudly that the whole world will hear his voice." And indeed, that's happened. He's perhaps the most influential theologian in all of church history. I think there's a number of reasons why St. Thomas Aquinas is not just this great saint from history, but also extremely relevant for our day. First of all, St. Thomas Aquinas dedicated himself to scholarship, and he dedicated himself to the ministry of teaching. This was a great charism of the Dominican order, actually. It is said that sometimes Dominican priests in those days, sometimes they would spend entire days just in a library preparing to teach and preach, and they had great success in their ministry. In our age, I think it is crucially important for us to appeal to people's intellects, people's minds. We try to appeal to people's hearts, their emotions. It's not that that's a bad thing, but emotions are fleeting. The mind doesn't change so easily. So if we win people's minds, we will win them for life, I think. Another reason why St. Thomas Aquinas is important for our day is because one of the things he was famous for doing in his teaching is that he would take the opinions of others, and unlike in our modern day, where we insult those points of views or we blatantly misrepresent what people are saying, St. Thomas Aquinas would take opposing views from his own, and he would portray them in the best possible light and the most convincing light. He would present those arguments in an even more convincing way than the people themselves did. In our age, where we talk past one another, where there's so many intellectual divisions, when there's so much insulting and derailing of the other persons and other points of view, we would do well to have some of the charity of St. Thomas Aquinas. The last thing I think why St. Thomas Aquinas could be very influential for us and very relevant is one of the reasons that actually a lot of people don't like about St. Thomas Aquinas. Anybody ever read any of his works? All right, some of you have looked into some of the things that he said. So the Summa Theologiae is the most famous work he wrote. He considered it a work for beginners. But if you've ever opened it up and read it, it's really long and very, I wouldn't say complicated, but just very dense. It's not a very easy read. And he wrote about just about everything. Any question you can imagine, he wrote about it. And if you ever try to read it, you'll probably think to yourself, gosh, man, why all this information? This is so much. But in my opinion, that's actually one of the reasons that made him so great. St. Thomas Aquinas marveled at the world. And because of that, there was nothing that he was not willing to talk about. There was nothing that he didn't want to dive deeper into. Many of his biographers say that St. Thomas Aquinas actually wept often. And he wept not out of sadness, but out of sheer marvel and wonder at the world that he was a part of, that he lived in. He marveled at it all. And in our modern age, I think we suffer from a true poverty of wonder. Many of us go around and we're stressed, we're busy, we're going from one thing to another, and we don't have any wonder at the world that we're living in because we're so bogged down by the things of the world that are occupying all of our attention, all of our worry. We need to have more wonder, marvel at this amazing world that God has given to us and this life that He has allowed us to participate in and live in.